All right, welcome to the Greater Wealth, OutEdgeRadioAustralia.com. We've got an interesting one today because clearly Mr. Malloy's not here. He's chucking a sickie or something, I don't know. He's having some time off. So he's let the shaved monkey loose. God, I haven't used that term for a while. The wife got pissed off, so I had to shave my beard. It's growing back quickly though, that's good. And so we do have the one, the only, the founder of Blue Sky Factory, all the way from Australia, because obviously I'm in Panama. For the people listening on the radio, they can't see it. But to my right, we have Derek, Mr. Whitaker. How you going?
I'm well. Yourself, Travis?
Oh, I'm tired. I'm so tired. It's like just hit midnight here in Panama. So 1 o'clock in Perth. But you know what? Finance never sleeps, and never will I, because I've had way too many coffees tonight. But I'm excited. I'm keen to see what's going to happen. And good old Mr. Trump is running riot again and making the finance industry have a lot of fun. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Mr. Whitaker.
There's a lot. Absolutely. There's a lot going on at the moment. And one of the big cases that has come through the courts, a decision's been made with the SEC, which is the Securities Exchange Commission. It's our equivalent of ASIC, okay, for those in Australia. They've dropped the case against a big crypto company called Ripple. This was a case that started back in 2020 and has been going on under the Biden administration, of course. And it was a case that they were accusing Ripple of selling derivative products illegally. And that has been a mixed result as far as the Ripple case was concerned. Why is this all important? Because it defines how crypto moves forward, the whole crypto space. So that's the point of it. What they found in part that they were not guilty in terms of releasing the coin to the consumers, the retail market, mum and dads. However, in terms of institutional finance, they found them guilty of that. The SEC originally wanted to fine them roughly about $2 billion. And that was massive. It was reduced to 120 million. And so, it was originally $2 billion that did that. But the judge, Judge Torres, later ordered Ripple to pay $125 million in fines. What's been holding this up is we kind of saw the writing on the wall that this was going to settle simply because, well, the Trump administration came in. Gary Gensler, who was the former head of the SEC, resigned on Inauguration Day after Trump was threatening his campaign for election to fire him. And of course, we now have at the helm of the SEC a crypto-friendly administration who are moving forward on this, and just passed, of course, Congress just passed the Genius Act, which is a big deal in terms of stablecoin regulation. People have underestimated, in my opinion, Travis, why this legislation is so important. It's important on three fronts. Number one, it legalizes cryptocurrency. The government recognizes it as a form of digital money and transaction. That is huge because that's always been the uncertainty. Will governments shut it down as they have in China? The second thing that this act puts forward is that stablecoins will have to be backed by something, whether they be treasury notes, gold, other foreign currencies, whatever it might be. They just can't create it out of thin air, which is what a lot of when the dollar was depegged, the US dollar in 1971, when the Nixon regime did that, they could just print it till the cows came home, how much ever they wanted, and leverage that. Now that's reined that all in, and it has to be backed by something, even if it is treasury notes. The third part of that legislation that's so important is incredible that people are totally underestimating, is that this means that crypto companies and tech companies can issue currency, right? This is huge. That's always been the role of central banks. So this changes the game massively as far as the whole industry is concerned. And now we're seeing this flow out with the SEC and which is now changed as far as the helm is concerned, and this company Ripple saying we will not sue each other. We'll drop the claims against each other. Because of course, if they win in part, they can start doing, we're going to claim legal fees and all this sort of stuff. And the parties have agreed, we'll cover our own legal fees. And the fine stands as the judge ruled for it to be 125 million. It was looking like that could be reduced to 50 million at one point, but Ripple's getting on with it, and they want the case closed. What this does is Ripple has done a lot of deals with a lot of entities. It's come out, they've done about 1,700 deals with banks around the globe. And it means that they can just get on with it. The banks have kind of been holding back because banks can't do anything. There's licenses involved. They can and can't do things. And so everybody's been wanting to know, what are the rules? What are the rules? And this is a really big deal as far as the crypto world is concerned. It's the only crypto company that has won a case in part against the SEC, which says a lot for it. The other cases that were, of course, were more targeted towards exchanges rather than issuers of actual cryptocurrencies or creators of cryptocurrency. So this is a really big deal.
I do have a couple of questions. So obviously, I'm not a crypto guy. I understand the importance of it, and I've always had a stance that I think there's too many governments pushing for a centralized digital currency, which I hate with a passion. I find crypto is effectively the cash of the digital world, or the gold of the digital world, because like it's on the blockchain, it's harder to track, it's harder to trace. It gives you that anonymity. Like you can do things privately. You can send money to each other privately without the government getting involved, which I really like. My big question here, you raised something saying that stable coins have to be backed against something. They can't just be airy-fairy coins.
Right.
So USDT, to my understanding, is a US dollar token. So it's backed by the US token. But the US dollar isn't backed by anything. So does that mean USDT is no longer a stable coin?
No, USDT is one of the biggest holders of treasury notes. So, you know, the whole bonds market that happen, they're holding a lot of treasury notes in escrow. I believe it's in Switzerland somewhere. Okay. It's meaning whatever is issued by these companies has to be backed by something with audits and checks and all that in place to prove that, hey, we're not just, you know, creating money out of thin air.
Okay, beautiful. So also people are saying to come in now. So if you do have any questions, please do reach out, check them in the comment section, and we'll answer them live as we go. Also, I do get constantly asked questions about how do I learn about crypto, stuff like that. So my wife, Laline's actually done your course. So if you do go to blueskyfactory.com.au, it is scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. Derek does have a crypto course, which can teach you more about it, which is really, really awesome. My other question that I had for you is, in Panama, I hate to say it, I think places like Panama and Vietnam have been leading the way with this one. So in Panama, there's a bank over here called Tower Bank, which has actually been for a while now, over a year, actually been accepting USDT and Ethereum as deposits into the bank. Now that this ruling has come through that it is an actual genuine currency, are we likely to start seeing more and more banks allowing crypto deposits rather than actual physical cash deposits or fiat currency deposits?
Absolutely. Jerome Powell went out, the head of the Federal Reserve, said that banks now can be custodians of crypto as long as they do it responsibly. So you're going to see that roll out to America. Now, America being the biggest economy in the world, you can expect other countries to follow suit with, of course, you've got Australia and also the European Central Bank experimenting with those things you fear, CBDCs at the moment, and projects like that. While the Trump administration has ruled there will be no CBDC, well, that was one of the campaign promises by Trump under his presidency, and they're trying to put legislation in now as we speak to prevent that from occurring. So some were not happy that that didn't occur before the Genius Act or was included in the Genius Act, but we're told that that is still progressing. In line with the Clarity Act as well. But when you've got the biggest banks in the world starting to jump on board, it just follows suit, so the others will have to. It's particularly in cross-border payments, which, you know, Ripple is certainly, in terms of its utility, famous for doing. And I think this is going to play out in a big way, because if they don't, you've got a dinosaur. The banks have to innovate. They haven't been able to, somewhat in terms of licenses and legislation, but secondly, they haven't wanted to. The central banks haven't wanted to have crypto. It's out of the tube. It's exposed now. It's go, go, go. And I think one of the things that was interesting, they shot themselves in the foot, right? The Trump, you know, I've heard and seen videos of Eric Trump explaining that when their dad got into politics, well, they were debanked. They were not allowed to move money around anymore, had their bank accounts frozen, this sort of thing. And it was a case of, we got to get into crypto to remove the middleman. And, in their circles and doing business, we're talking, millions to billions of dollars in deals that has to be moved around. So, the banks have shot themselves in the foot by using it as a political weapon.
Well, the way I say this, they've created this massive void, and something I've noticed in the last couple of years, especially since we started migrating out of Australia and into Vietnam, Panama, and America, the amount of way, there used to only be one way to do money transfers, like internationally, and that was through the SWIFT system. You could go down to Western Union. What was that one? There's a couple of the money transfer people, but they take the money, they put it into the SWIFT system, send it into another country, pay heaps of fees. The currency exchange they give you is terrible. Now, because we had to transfer a fair chunk of money from Australia to Australia to Panama, and we had to do it, I think, within about 48 hours. So for the first chunk, we used Wise, a company called Wise.com, which makes international wallets. That was relatively quick, but the fastest way that we actually did it was actually through cryptocurrency. We transferred from Australian dollars into a cryptocurrency and then just transferred it into the other wallet. Like I said over here, the banks actually accept cryptocurrency as a form of deposits. So that was nearly instant, which was amazing. It managed to pay all our lawyers' bills and everything up front, and was just really, really good. Now, for those that are listening, we have a couple of special guests on next week, on the Monday, who can actually answer questions regarding coming, if you do want to move offshore, on how to do it. And I know Derek is pretty good with the knowledge on that side of things as well. So if you do need more information on that, we need to be pointing in the right direction. Again, blueskyfactory.com.au. We can't give you personal advice on here. I just punched the table. Sorry about that. We can't give you personal advice on here because obviously neither of us are licensed. But on next week's show, I'm going to be using myself as a case study because I've actually done this. So I'm in Panama. Okay, so Derek, I'm super excited about this. I think I might actually have to do your crypto course because I need to get up to speed with this one. But how far-reaching do you think this is actually going to go?
Oh, it's going to be massive, and I'll tell you why, Travis. Because already we're getting into tokenization of assets. We're seeing this unfold in Dubai at the moment as well. They've just passed legislation recently where assets can be tokenized, and so the whole concept, where in previous past, if you wanted to buy investment property, you'd have to buy the entire property or get a loan, right? Mm-hmm. Now people can put up like $100, $500. And buy a token of a property kind of concept. So that opens a whole world to, even commercial property spaces that perhaps wasn't available to them in the past. For example, shopping malls or commercial property, as well as your residential estates and stuff like this. So this is a game changer in a big way. But not only that, is allowing people to invest internationally on a bigger scale as well. It's early days, but there are case studies of people already doing that within Australia. I've been told by my accountant, and he'll be appearing on the show next week, which is really, really exciting. So he's had customers doing this already. I'm also watching how in the United States people are buying properties with cryptocurrency. And the United Arab Emirates is leading the way as far as tokenization of property in their country is concerned. And allowing Americans now to start investing in there, whereas it was initially only going to be to residents of the UAE. So this is not going away. This is more than just, is it an investment? This is how money moves. This is where it's going. It's currency. It's like, your plastic notes and money and cash that you've held. This is becoming the new cash. So, it's massive. It's big time, because, it's kind of how the United States was actually, it shot itself in the foot too when it did sanctions against Russia in the Russian-Ukraine conflict and stopped basically Russia doing transactions. Well, how does a nation supposed to trade and do deals and keep functioning? Well, they started moving to different phases, including cryptocurrency. So, this is enormous.
Well, you can argue that the sanctions from America prior to Ukraine is actually what caused the creation of Ethereum. So there's consequences for every single action. And I think this is where it's really important. You do need to understand, first of all, the system you're in, and what the next system is coming. So I think this is where it's really, really important, especially for people looking at the US markets, because another one is the cryptos are now, because of the Genius Act, are actually allowed into pension accounts, and we call them superannuation accounts. In America, they call them 401. But it even goes even further than that as well, because in Panama, sorry, the reason I keep bringing Panama up is that's what I'm familiar with at the moment, is they've always considered cryptocurrency an actual currency. So they've never charged a capital gains tax on any of the transactions, where for the people who are still in Australia, every time you transact on a cryptocurrency, you're triggering a capital gains event.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. And that has to change. And I think that's what they're doing. They're also double dipping in tax as well, especially for those who do what we call staking, where they can get interest, so to speak, on their money or on their investments, receive crypto coins as reward for putting it onto the blockchain. And so what's happening is money's being taxed when they do that as income. And then when they convert it back to fiat, it's taxed as well. And there's actually legislation from Senator Loomis in the United States to change that. And I think that will be really, really pertinent, because what's happened as far as the IRS is concerned, the guy they just nominated to do that has been fired, and they're putting up crypto czar David Sachs as the sorry, not crypto czar Sachs. Who was it? It's one of the other guys who was just involved with the Genius bills. All these names are running through my head. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is going to be the acting IRS commissioner. So Scott Bessent is taking the role, and this is huge because, if he's just wrote in the Genius Act and now he's getting involved with the IRS, you can see what's at play here in terms of how taxation will be changing as far as crypto is concerned.
So one of the guests that had come on the show regularly also raises a note that the IRS legislation is 75,000 pages long. So it's an absolutely huge document. There's no way anyone can actually tell exactly what's going on. Is this sort of like a precursor to a total overhaul of the IRS and the taxation bill for places like America?
I think it's part of it. I think obviously Trump has been with his tariffs wanting to replace the IRS with the ERS, External Revenue Service. And I think it's time, in time, that will be reviewed, because, it takes a while for that legislation, which happened on 1st of August, so only days ago, for that money to trickle on through and then start seeing the effects of how that's going to play on the economy, putting billions of dollars into the United States Treasury, as well as attracting other investment from countries who want to avoid those tariffs and do deals there. I mean, Apple has just put $100 million of investment in the United States and signed a deal there, which is never done before, which is ironic because you've got a US company now investing $100 billion in its own country when it's had it offshore all this time. So, you're seeing it's about $17 trillion now of investment going back into the United States. If you've got tariffs pulling in that income for you, then of course the IRS is due for an overhaul. And not only just an overhaul, but a total review as to its function moving forward.
Yeah, I get a lot of people, a lot of my family are on the left side of politics. They support the Labor Party in Australia, and they don't understand why that $17 trillion worth of investment is such a big thing. It's like, oh, but they've got a $37 trillion deficit. And it's like, yeah, but you go, look, this is investment. So this is building infrastructure. This is hiring people. This is the ongoing jobs. This is the income tax revenue that they're going to get. This is going to be the corporation tax revenue that they're going to be receiving. There's so many benefits and perks to these sort of investments that the flow-on effect is absolutely massive. And so I think, I hate to say, I think America is absolutely, probably at least the next 10, possibly 50 years are going to be a huge economic boom. And we're seeing that on the stock market as well. So a lot of people were writing off companies like NVIDIA, who lost 40% of their value when they first announced these tariffs. They're actually about $30 above what their historical high was. So they went from 140 all the way down to 96. And now they're up about 100, I think it was 182 at close on Friday. So this level of growth has been, no one saw it coming. I think very few people saw this sort of impact. I think a lot of the economists are now eating their words, and I've even seen a few come out and say, we did not expect this to happen. A lot of them are actually coming around in support of it. Seeing how rapidly they've turned around, supported the tariffs, how soon till we see some of these head economists actually going, you know what, maybe this crypto thing is here to stay. Maybe it is a good thing. At what point do the large major investment banks start turning around saying, right, okay, we've now got these financial packages based around crypto?
Well, what do you got? Okay, there's a couple of layers to that. Let's deal with the last question first. I think the big issue is that Wall Street has not been able to profit from crypto. And that's why they've banned it so much, because, one, they haven't been licensed to be able to do it in the big managed funds, right? They haven't had fund managers able to look after that. It's really still early days as far as mainstream adoption is concerned. We're just, the window's been this wide. Now it's getting this wide as far as opportunity is concerned. And back to your point in terms of getting the education, you better hustle to get it now. But yeah, they haven't been able to do that. And I'm still looking at, news sources of your traditional like Reuters and stuff like that. They're all talking about how risky it is and how bad it is. I mean, you've got to realize, Travis, too, Trump's just passed an executive order to allow Americans with 401ks, the retirement plans, to invest in crypto, property, and other private equity. That's huge. And again, it puts Wall Street giants out because they don't at the moment have ability to profit from that. So it's a huge, huge game changer. It's kind of like the Australian version of self-managed super funds, where you can determine what your retirement money is going to be invested in and manage it yourself, as opposed to leaving it to a fund manager to do that, who you've never met and had no relationship to whatsoever. You just get a form each year saying how much you've made, how much you've lost. So this is huge on many fronts. One, it's taking power from Wall Street. Two, it's also lining up for the crypto space more trillions and trillions of dollars to potentially roll into that sector, which is massive. And that changes the whole market capitalization of some of these crypto companies in a big way. So it's massive. But I think there will be a market crash in the near future, very near future. I think we're in rocky times ahead, because I think with all these changes, there's a lot of people that don't like these changes and want to rock the boat to try to bring it back to what it has been. To one, not only just for issuance of wealth, but also issuance of power. And I think we're going to see that play out. So I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing immediately. And of course, when it does go down, you might hear your critics, bemoan it. This is bad.
I told you so.
Yeah. And hear that, which is normal human reaction, the blame leadership when it goes wrong. So I think, Trump's got his work cut out for him in navigating through that. But yeah, I think long term, it's a fantastic move.
So the one point I want to raise here, because I, for a long time, have done foreign exchange trading. The amount of volume of trades that happens on foreign exchange. So I'm going to use the US dollar to Japanese yen. At one point, pre-COVID, it was like $1.3 trillion. This is US dollars per day. That's how much was changing hands backwards and forwards. So let's say just 1% of that gets diverted across to crypto, and then the volume of where it's going backwards and forwards. So the market cap on a lot of the crypto markets, I heard it was something like $50 billion. That's the market cap of the entire crypto market. So if you add 1% of the foreign exchange trade, if 1% of the people go from foreign exchange over into the crypto market and start trading there instead, you're looking at 1.1% of 1.3 trillion. You're looking at let's just say $100 billion extra going into the crypto market. You're going to see huge levels of growth in a lot of these stable coins. So do you think it's unrealistic for Bitcoin to be valued around the $300,000 US dollars, XRP to be valued at $100,000, what some of these experts are actually saying that they're going to get close to hitting?
Look, I'm not sure about the future of Bitcoin. I think a lot of companies are using it as treasury at the moment. But you've got to remember that Bitcoin's technology is slow. It takes 20 minutes to do an exchange from one wallet to another on that. So Bitcoin for me, yeah, it's the granddaddy of it, but does it have the technology to, be efficient for its services like banking institutions that need, settlement soon? I mean, yes, it's more efficient than the SWIFT system, but you've also got to remember in this space too, just back to your point in terms of 1% of the $1 trillion market, if one or two banks start doing crypto and settlements in crypto and reduce their administration costs significantly, well, to be competitive, the others are going to jump on board. And I think that's it's just the technology is better. If they can reduce their staff levels and handling levels better and offer better customer service, they will be forced to move on to that to stay competitive and to keep their profits up. So I think there's that component too. In terms of pricing, look, I'm really reluctant to go public on that. But at the moment, we are seeing mainstream adoption. We're seeing also with not only the 401ks lining up to be able to move into those markets, but also a lot of hedge funds are now in Wall Street lining up, as well as big companies holding it as a reserve. So they're buying Bitcoin, they're buying XRP, they're buying other type of crypto to hold as far as their security assets are concerned. And also being able to offer ETFs to the public, which is really huge. ETFs are like a managed fund that give you exposure. So, for example, it's hard for like a superannuation fund to store gold, physical gold itself. So what they might do is buy shares in an ETF that only buys gold. Okay, and so they get the synthetic equivalent of what the gold prices are doing up and down. That's what they're doing with crypto as well, and offering that, as well as options on those, which are derivative products that allow the market to hedge against these what have been very volatile assets. So when you've got some sort of form of insurance against these volatile assets, it changes the game for investment funds and hedge managers.
Okay. I'm wondering if it's worth creating a fund that will buy properties. I wonder if that's possible.
Well, it's already being done in terms of what the crypto world can do. Is that what you're talking about? Tokenization?
I was thinking, now that I might be over in America, I was thinking maybe Edge should make a coin backed by a property. Go buy some of those really, really cheap properties over in like Detroit or Chicago or something.
They're already looking at that. Yeah, there are already projects like that.
So I think that would be hilarious. I'll have a look into it. Maybe I'll get you to create one for us, Derek.
We can talk off air on that.
Okay, definitely. So what else has been going on in the world lately?
Okay, so you've got that going on, and then some fascinating things happening in the world of gold. Now, this kind of links in with tariffs, which is really, really interesting. One of my students put this on my radar, and I've looked into it a little bit more. And it's the whole fact that gold futures shot up to a new intraday high, with gold hitting $3,534.10 an ounce last week. And this is big time, because what happened was that the COMEX, which is the most traded type of bullion in the world's biggest futures markets, they're now starting to classify those 1 kilo bars as ones that attract tariffs into the United States. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, America, there was big orders from Europe in moving gold back into the United States. There were a lot of companies saying, we want our gold before, if Trump introduces a tariff on that, we want to do that. And there was a bit of a shortage. They're going to have to walk around all the bullions and find what actually owns them, because there's a serial number on the bullion, right? So that was hard. And then they have to they can't just go straight from London, where they're being stored, to the United States or New York. They actually had to go back to Switzerland and be recast, resmelted into the size that America allows. And so Trump has put on a tariff on the 1 kilogram bar, which Switzerland is very famous for doing. Now, why is that interesting? Because the United States has put on a tariff of 39% on Switzerland. Okay, it's the highest in the Western world as far as tariffs are concerned. So they have not been able to negotiate anything less than that, the Swiss. And their leader went over to have a meeting with, of course, Trump, trying to get a meeting with him, and they didn't even put her in front of her. They were ghosted when she went over there. He had a phone call with her, and basically she comes from the Thatcher. She sees Thatcher as a hero, the tough type of negotiation, even Muhammad Ali, and Trump just wouldn't budge. He said she wouldn't bargain. So that kind of strategy has fallen on their face as far as that is concerned. Now, look at these key facts about Switzerland. This is what's really, really interesting, because the Swiss aren't known for flooding US with cheap goods, right? One of the biggest exports, of course, is the watch market. Yep. But also precious metals. Switzerland refines roughly about 50 to 70% of the world's 3,300 tons of gold each year. All right. So they smelt that every year. That's huge. And they often are doing this with gold bars coins out of mined recycled gold with 99.99% purity as far as the quality is concerned. In 2024, their imports of precious metals and gemstones was 127.3 billion, and their exports in that same year of precious metals and gemstones was $184.7 billion. So it's reported that in the first quarter of 2025, the Swiss exported $36 billion of gold to the United States. You imagine the tariffs at 39% is huge when you're talking that kind of money. And this is affecting the price of gold because, of course, these tariffs have just kicked in. So watch that space. I think there's more to be uncovered in that story. But yeah, some people are just saying, well, cryptocurrency isn't taxed like that, whereas the precious metal is. Why would America do this? I'm wondering if they're sitting on a whole big bunch of gold stash that they're not making public right now. That's one of the rumors that's going around. So it'll be really fascinating to watch this space and how it unfolds.
I know that the BRICS nations have been, over the last 3 or 4 years, been buying up gold in droves, like huge amounts of numbers. I'm kind of surprised by this because Trump at one point said that they needed to make sure all their gold was real. First of all, make sure Fort Knox didn't have fake gold or tungsten gold, but also that they had the reserves that they once had. Why would he try and stop gold coming into the country? I don't see. I suppose if you're bringing the gold in, US dollars is going out, and the number one export for America is the US dollar.
There's a $40 billion trade deficit between the two countries, right, in favor of Switzerland. So that's what Trump's trying to negotiate and swing around. And you've got to remember, too, that Switzerland is fascinating in terms of its place in Europe. It's like central banking. It's big. Its whole banking industry is massive there, right? It's of the ultra wealthy. Well, if you've got Trump out here redefining money in terms of crypto and digital money, this changes the game big time. This is a big power shift as far as how we define money, how we look at it, and what we value.
So one thing I do know is you hear the term in the movies all the time, Swiss bank accounts. There's no names on it. It's just a number. It's called anonymous banking. So not many countries in the world actually still do this. So one country I really support is Singapore. They do not consider gold an asset. They consider it a commodity. So what happens is the government can't just come in and confiscate your assets in Singapore because gold's not an asset, it's a commodity. So that's why there's a lot of really big vaults being opened up down in Singapore. The other one that I'm really, really supportive in this situation is Panama, because it still has anonymous banking. They don't report who owns what bank accounts. So I think with Switzerland, I've read it about 4 years ago, Switzerland was actually starting to stop being an anonymous banking country. So I'm wondering, is this sort of like a ploy by Trump to try and get them to reinstate that situation? I don't think this is the right move by the US, but I don't have enough information on it. On the surface, I think America shot themselves in the foot with this one.
I think this one, there is more to the story than you see that is going on, Travis. I think it's one where you watch this space and how this plays out. Because if you've got all this money moving out of Europe, all this gold moving out of Europe back into the United States, it just places a shift of wealth as far as the nations are concerned and custodianship. But it also changes the dynamics of how the old world money is relating to the new world money, which America wants to be the center of. And I think that's the point. So yeah, it's really fascinating, the power shifts that are going on here.
The other thing people also at home need to understand, gold has always been, I've just got to think of how to word this properly, has always been effectively a hedge against inflation. So you think about 1920s, you could buy a really, really nice Armani suit for the price of a gold bar. Even today, you can still buy a really, really nice Armani suit for the price of a gold bar. So it's one of those things, if let's say you're working and you want to start saving up a bit of money and you don't really want to keep it in cash, but you want to have your money easily available, gold can be an idea on where to store your funds. Obviously, seek professional advice on this one, or do one of Derek's courses. But gold is an interesting one because throughout time, it hasn't really lost its value. It's one of the things that's always held its value going backwards and forwards.
If anything, the gold price has been manipulated as well as silver. And yep. I think that it's been to a point where I think it's starting to see its true value. The banks have kept it low so that they can buy more of it more cheaply than what it actually is. And I think I'm expecting gold to, continue to rise as well as silver. Not for a while, but it's already starting to do that anyway. We're seeing it hit all new highs and that sort of stuff. But I think its true value is starting to come into play, and the world is recognizing and waking up to that. And how, if markets are starting to go, well, these things need to be backed by something, people are looking for real world value. And, if stable coins are going to be doing that, then, who's to say that you can't have stable coins, and they already do have them, that are backed by gold.
Yep. The other thing to take into account with gold as well, don't forget, with the peace agreement between Uganda and the Republic of the Congos, there's a lot of gold over there. There's a lot of precious gemstones and things like that as well. So is that going to cause an influx of material into the market, and is that going to hurt the value as well? So there's a lot of things you need to take into account before you actually buy any of these things. So Derek, we've got about 8 minutes left on the show. What's the final things that you want to talk about before we call it a night?
Well, we've covered most of it, Travis. I think that the biggest issue, I mean, there's other things that are going on. When you've got the IRS being swapped out, leadership changing there, you're seeing money like Apple, big companies saying, yeah, we're going to pour our investments into the United States. This isn't going away. And this is defining how the world relates to the United States, geopolitically as well as financially. And so money talks. And so people are going to want their piece of the pie for their nations as well. Really exciting times ahead. Yes, I think there'll be a few storms to go through. And I'm talking big storms. And people will go, what is going on? What is going on? But it relates to, an old thing from the Bible. It talks about the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. And, is it a benevolent man? I'm going to misquote it and butcher it. He leaves wealth for the generations. In other words, 2 generations. And I think, our shift of mindset of leaving wealth for, I'm going to spend the kids' retirement from the baby boomer generation has got to go. It's not good enough just to leave a wealth for your kids. You've got to be thinking about 2 generations. And so I would encourage people to start thinking that way and broadening how big they think. I think some of the mindsets that we come across is, I'll just buy my home and go from there and I'll be good. And most people, most Australians are happy if they've got a home, they've got the boat or the toy, 2 cars and the holiday every year. And I think you've really got to think beyond that. What really is your life purpose? And some people, that's great. Other people are called to play at a bigger level, and not just think millionaires, but have to think billionaires. And there is opportunities right now for that to actually occur, but you've got to have the right education to find it. And I think you've got to have the right heart attitude with it as well. Is your money going to rule you, or are you going to rule it? And that's really, really important, because anything that's unresolved, if there's a hole in your soul right now, as far as how you respond to people, unforgiveness, all this stuff, it's only amplified when there's great wealth in your bank accounts or crypto wallets, as the case may be.
So one of the things that triggered us to actually get out of Australia was I can see what's going on politically in Australia. And since I've left Australia, the amount of stupid legislation that's come out, especially around financing, is amazing. I cannot believe that our government is as stupid as they are. So it was really, really important to me. So a lot of the viewers understand that I had a very, very serious motorbike accident in 2015, nearly killed me, actually, destroyed my back. So what happened is we went from having a really stable income to absolute nothing. So I learned the importance of having a backup plan. And I just feel at the moment what the Australian government is doing is, doesn't matter what your backup plan is. So we've renovated houses, we've had rental properties on the market, I've done different forms of trading in Australia. And every time I start getting ahead, the government changes the rules again. And it got to the point where it was impossible for me to be able to plan for our family and moving forward. So that's why I had to go and done your courses, Derek. I feel like an infomercial. I keep pumping your show. But we had to figure out a way to do it. And now we were not rich by any stretch of the imagination. We were actually on disability pensions and all this sort of stuff. We were Centrelink people. And even at that low level, we will be able to actually come across into Panama. We were able to go to Vietnam. We were able to set ourselves up to the point where I could actually retire at 40. So it is possible, even for people from lower socioeconomic areas, but you need to be able to be aware of what's going on. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about next week's show, because it doesn't actually cost that much money to do what we've done. This isn't something for the rich and the famous. You hear about the famous Panama Papers in Australia, where Malcolm Turnbull, the Australian Prime Minister, got named for offshoring people of his finances. So you don't need millions and millions and millions of dollars to do that. You can actually do it relatively cheap, and the amount of money that you can save in different ways definitely offsets it for years to come. So I think for the people watching me online, please do tune in next week, because we do have some very, very amazing guests coming in. So you've already dropped the ball on Alex coming in next week, your accountant. I've actually got my lawyer from Panama who's going to be joining us as well. So Juan Rodriguez, I'll let him introduce himself and all that, but a bit of a heads up, his English isn't the greatest, so he's definitely Spanish. So anyway, Derek, I think today we're probably going to wrap today's show up a little bit early because it's been so full and there's a lot of other stuff to go through. But final words, with what's going on, what do you think the biggest thing to watch out for in the next, say, 6 months to watch out for?
Oh gosh, I think there is attempts to take money from people, and you've got to navigate that smart. I think, and that comes on many fronts. Whether you've highlighted political forces, but there's also, it's funny. I've been led to do a lot of study on narcissism stuff in the last few years or so of people who would want to, take your piece of the pie and all this sort of stuff, to be aware of the gold digging scumbags, as someone we know once called them. And I think it's a case of thinking and treating money as a game. I think that takes a lot of the emotion out of the equation. And I think, as I said, always, and I'll say it again, something I always tell my students is, what is your life purpose? Because so many people are unhappy spending 40 to 60 hours of their week doing something they really don't like doing. It doesn't matter the vehicle. I mean, you've highlighted a few vehicles there, but your life purpose, everything centers around that. What is it you're really meant to be doing? And the vehicle can be built around that. Some people will play, in the millions, some will play in the billions, some will play in the hundreds of thousands, and that's great. But again, if you're not doing your life purpose, what's the point of it all? And that, once you start stepping into that life purpose, there are all these sort of attacks that try to take you away and off it. And I believe that some of them are spiritual. So you've got to have a connection with your creator as well, to protect you from that. And as you get downloads from him, from God, he'll show you how to protect that and navigate through those waters. And I think that's the really thing. You've got to take every investment back to prayer, because it's different for everyone. Everyone's situation, circumstances are completely different. And he can give you a tailored design that's perfect for you and your situation.
All right, perfect. So we're right on time now. So I'm going to wrap up the show there. Derek, once again, thanks very much for leading the Greater Wealth on Edge Radio Australia. Again, for the people listening online, please do send a message to Derek. Just go to blueskyfactory.com.au. Now, remember, blue does not have an E in the name. Alternatively, if you can't find his website, just come to us and we'll pass a message on for him. So, edgeradioaustralia.com.au. And that is us.